Bom dia, and welcome to a new edition of Inside Grand Prix. Today, the topic is the Brazilian Grand Prix, the grand finale of the 2006 season. Picturesque beaches and untouched nature, the jewels of this Amazonian land. Welcome to Brazil, South America's largest country. Exotic and full of life, that's the Brazilian way. Rio de Janeiro's for many the most beautifully located city in the world. The 6 million cariocas are especially proud of their Copacabana. To be and be seen, that's the motto on the world's most famous beach. At Formula One time, however, it's the hot curves of Sao Paulo that get the attention.
The atmosphere is always very special. You've got a lot of Brazilian drivers on the grid. They're there to support Rubens. And I think that's important, that you have a driver on the grid that they can really support, and that's what does make the events. And Brazil is no different. They really get behind Rubens and Felipe and the Brazilian drivers, which is fantastic because of their great drivers they had in the past, like Nelson Piquet and Senna, Fittipaldi and these guys. So they love their motor racing, very passionate.
The Brazilians are avid Formula One fans. Ahead of the Grand Prix at Interlagos, Ferrari and co are omnipresent. Stars of the past are worshipped like heroes. Today's idols celebrated like pop stars. Be it Barrichello or Massa, the fans will be backing their boys with plenty of South American fervor. And one thing that's certainly not lacking here is passion. No country's more football crazy, and no carnival more colorful than Rio's. When Brasileiros party, the whole street's involved, so a great atmosphere is certainly guaranteed. I think Brazil's a lovely place to end the season, not forgetting the parties afterwards, of course. I certainly think it's a good place for it, definitely. And the atmosphere there is always great, especially now with Massa and Barrichello in top teams. Lots of fans are sure to come along. They come to Sao Paulo, the boomtown at the heart of the country's economy. The biggest city, the densest traffic, the most colorful mix of people. Settlers once came here from all over the world. Witness to the Portuguese colonial times is stillborn by the magnificent buildings from those days. Brazil's major cities are drowned in traffic day and night. It's chaos on the streets, but the locals take it in their stride, simply letting themselves be swept along by the pulsating life. They like nothing more than to create a real party mood, turning night into day. So on Sunday, having a newly crowned world champion is sure to be a welcome excuse to dance right through the night. Next in Safety Focus, what were the effects of the new regulations in 2006? But first, let's go for a lap on the circuit in Sao Paulo. The circuit for the Brazilian Grand Prix is at Interlagos, in English, between the lakes. The teams and their drivers meet here to battle it out for the points for the 18th and final time this year. Tropical, humid heat makes it tough for the drivers, and the circuit itself also has its perils.
Probably turn 1 and 2, because you have the center S, which is very, very important for lap time to get right. You need the braking perfect on the way in. There's a big camber change on the way in, so it's easy to lock the front left tyre. Then you need to get yourself set up for turn 2 and the run down the hill. So for a long full throttle time along the back straight. So that's the most important part to get right. Of course, there's other corners you need to be very good at as well, but that's challenging, that first section.
So off we go, and within seconds it's through the Senna S, named after Sao Paulo's greatest son, Ayrton Senna. From almost 300 down to under 100 kilometers an hour, especially in the pack on lap 1, a tricky affair. Then downhill at top speed along the back straight and sharp left into the infield. While flat wings and modest downforce were required a moment ago, from now on it's precisely the opposite needed. Ferrarada, La Rancha, Pinheirino. It's now one tight corner after the other, and it's hard to get the setup right. The asphalt is also bumpy, and the level of grip inclined to be poor. I think the circuit's very hard for the drivers because it's very bumpy and you go round to the left, which you're not very used to because almost all the others go round to the right, and that's quite clearly very tough for the drivers. The race at Interlagos is run anti-clockwise, as is done elsewhere only in San Marino and Turkey. Unfamiliar G-forces and a hard bumpy surface put a great strain on the drivers, especially in fast corners. Down again into first gear approaching turn 12, but then full throttle up the hill towards the start-finish line. After 4.3 kilometers, our first lap is then done. 70 more exciting laps remain of the 2006 season in Formula One. And this is the situation before the showdown. Fernando Alonso takes a 10-point safety cushion to Sao Paulo. Michael Schumacher's only chance lies in winning, and the world champion has to fail utterly. Renault's 9 points ahead of Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship. Bronze this year goes to McLaren Mercedes. Coming up in Legends, Formula One 30 years ago. Now in personal, the world champions face off. It's an important race for us.
We will be ready again this year to fight.
Ideally, I'd like to win.
I want to finish with Renault in the best way possible.
There can only be one. One world champion, Fernando Alonso or Michael Schumacher. 12 years and 10 points lie between them. A clear advantage for Spain. Over recent years, nobody's left their mark on Formula One like he has. He made red once again a dominant color. Michael Schumacher, off track, if at all, only artistically. I'm a hopeless case in that respect. The only art I can master is the art of driving. 7 world championships say it all. But after 15 years, this is now to be his last in Formula One. For him, an exhausting year ends with a taxing chase. Presumptuous to ask whether his stamina's failing. I was just as well prepared at the start of the year as I am now. For years, no one could come close to him. And then he came along. The young Fernando's career began in a similar way to Michael's, with a fascination for karts. There's something else they have in common too. A first Formula One title with Flavio Briatore, who in 2005 turned Alonso into the youngest world champion ever.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you are champion with 24 or 28, but for sure it's better to be young and to have a competitive car and to have the possibility to fight for the championships. And I had this great opportunity in my life, and I'm champion now, so really with 24 I achieved the maximum in my life, so I have to find new targets now.
And his new target remains the same. The Spaniard's simple aim is to defend his title. Until mid-season, the package of Alonso, Renault and Michelin works perfectly, encountering almost no competition. But Ferrari continues to catch up. Points are equal after 16 races. The youngster suffers a display of nerves and falls back on understatement.
Michael is the reference for all of us, 7 times world champion, and if Ferrari is good again this year like it seems to be, Michael will be the favorite one.
But now it's Alonso who's on the verge of winning the championship, and it's hard to imagine him tripping up again. Schumacher can only hope for a penalty in the last minute of play. The title in 2006, the Spaniard needs only 1 point to claim it. But watch out, nobody would have thought that Schumacher wouldn't complete the race in Japan, allowing Alonso to win. Next in Safety Focus, the new regulations in 2006. And now for Techno, who so learns young, students and Formula One. A functioning team and the car's performance are key to any triumph. Everything's constantly tested, fine-tuned and perfected. New materials and methods continue to make racing cars even faster, lighter and more powerful. In the test lab, as in the pits, the engineers are always in action. Their work forms the basis for every success. It's also all about technology and know-how in the Formula Student Young Engineers competition. Students from 18 countries have developed their own racing cars to strict competition rules. And it's not just about speed. They've got to master many different jobs. The competition rules specify that the students have got to design, construct and build a vehicle that's competitive and suitable for amateur weekend racing. Limitations in terms of price and equipment are thus automatically built in. They've got to organize the team. In fact, they've got to do the construction, do cost estimates, do the marketing, document the technology and organize sales, all in a relatively short period. The teams have just under a year from draft design to presentation. Cost estimates, marketing, and looking for sponsors don't come easily to the students. However, on the technical side, they're not far behind the professionals. CAD models, carbon and carbon fiber. It's just like Formula One. Every successful step a reason to celebrate. Having learnt the theory in lectures, they now see what it means in practice. So you integrate all of the components in the CAD, produce the production drawing, do the manufacturing, and then put it all together. Naturally, not everything fits the way it's supposed to, but that's okay too. And by the time you're done, you know a whole lot more. Endless hours, days and nights later, and the teams are ready for the great moment of reckoning on the track. The first hurdle is a strict inspection from the race officials, just like in Formula One. Then come the individual disciplines. How good are the acceleration, brakes and handling? How long will the car keep going? For 4 days, the engines drone and the teams battle for points and places. Petrol fumes hang in the air, along with a hint of Formula One. To think that just a week ago these pits were full of Ferrari, McLaren and the others in Formula One, it's certainly a great feeling to say that we're just behind them, as it were, following in their footsteps, and of course hoping perhaps to be part of that one day. The teams sometimes still have teething problems. Not everything's yet running smoothly. There's still a lot to work on, and a long road ahead of the Ross Browns and Sam Michaels of the future. Undoubtedly, however, we'll see several again in Formula One. Time for a short break, but we'll be right back with our news and facts. In Safety Focus, the 2006 regulations made things exciting. Don't go away. Welcome back to Inside Grand Prix. Coming up next, news and facts. But first, Safety Focus explores the effects of the 2006 regulations. On go the helmets for the last time this year, and it's off for the final race. A season of major rule changes. The FIA's main new announcements: pit stop tyre changes once again allowed, a new qualifying system, and last but not least, down from V10 to V8 engines. On the technical side, the new engines have proved themselves, creating significantly greater equality. The cars have become slower, it's therefore safer. Yes, it was a good rule, and what you might call the sporting aspect, such as changing the qualifying system, well, that's become a real highlight. What's been created here is a moment of tension that you now certainly wouldn't want to be without. The teams needed a rethink. They had to come to terms with the new technical terrain, always with an eye firmly on the issue of safety.
Über die Sicherheit lässt sich immer streiten.
You can always argue about safety because it's very difficult to define it precisely in Formula One. Everyone wants to try to make everything as safe as possible. But I think it was definitely very exciting. The tyre change was very quick and extremely tense. And for me, as a test driver, that's naturally great fun.
Sehr viel Spaß.
The new tyre regulations finally again permitted pit stop tyre changes. The tyres therefore no longer had to last so long. As a consequence, the compound is now softer and the tyres provide more grip. Compared to the V10 engines, the capacity of the V8 units is around 20% lower. So, were they slow and boring? Hardly, but the combination of the fast-revving V8 engines and soft tyre compounds really packs a punch.
Generally, the engines were still quite strong. I think the V8 was a little bit in terms of torque, and you had to change your style a little bit in terms of the way you attack the corners, because the V10 was a lot more powerful and torquey off the corners. But the grip level was very high this year from the cars because the downforce has been improving for all the teams, and also the tyre war between Bridgestone and Michelin in turn brings the grip levels up. So the corner speeds have been very, very high this year, which changes the style also. So together those 2 or 3 things have changed the style in Formula One.
To compensate for the reduction in engine power, the engineers had to make modifications elsewhere. There was less a need for speed on the straights, more for speed in and out of the corners. The task for the aerodynamic experts was to find the lost downforce again. The result, totally new wing constructions, including experiments with flexible elements, guiding the airflow in perfect aerodynamic fashion. Another fun factor for the fans, the new qualifying system. 3 sessions that create tension and at times throw the balance of power up in the air. In the race too, more thrilling chases and duels.
Well, the first thing you look at is tyre degradation, and that is how much lap time degradation you have over, say, a 20-lap stint. You put that into your simulation. You then put in the fuel burn effect, because as you're burning fuel off, the car is getting lighter, so the car is going quicker because it has less fuel, but it's going slower because the tyres are getting older. So you have a balance there between those 2 things. Then the third parameter is how long the pit lane is, so how long it takes you to do a stop. And those 3 things you feed into your strategy program. Try different strategies, 2 stop, 3 stop, 1 stop. And then once you decide what strategy you should take, you then look at the number of laps you should do.
The final regulations for 2007 are still being refined. And there's even a rumor that in the distant future the FIA is going to look at systems of energy recovery via heat and exhaust fumes. Formula One is indeed to become more environmentally aware. And now, the world champion 30 years ago. When James Hunt won the World Championship in 1976, he'd begun the season as the rank outsider. Then 29, he was regarded as a playboy who never said no to a drink, loved women, and was seen as a fun-loving charmer. His long hair and post-race cigarette were his trademarks. And who better to tell us about him than his greatest rival that year? James was one of the greatest guys around. He was a bit way out, a hippie. Of course, he could drive very fast, but he was also very difficult to race against, because when he was on form, and he generally was, he was almost unbeatable. He was a guy who was really well on his way. He was very likable, and one of the drivers that I was closest to at the time, with whom I spent a lot of my time away from the track. My greatest rival. And in 1976, when of course I had my crash at the Nürburgring and had to miss a couple of races, he then beat me to the Drivers' Championship by 1 point. Many initially regarded James Hunt as fast, but also as volatile. It was only when he was surprisingly offered the vacant drive with McLaren that Hunt realized the opportunity that was facing him. He changed his lifestyle and for the first time really knuckled down to Formula One. Practice sessions, he was in a class of his own, qualifying 11 times for the front row of the grid. In the fourth race of the season in Spain, James Hunt showed all his critics what he was capable of. He outclassed Niki Lauda in the Ferrari, who until then had reigned supreme, and won by 30 seconds to take top spot on the podium for the first time. From race 8, the French Grand Prix, James Hunt and McLaren developed into a forceful unit. The M23 was technically stable and the equal of the Ferrari 312 T2. James Hunt had gotten used to the way the team worked and was a match for anyone in terms of driving skill and speed. With Niki Lauda crashing badly at the Nürburgring and suffering from the after effects for the rest of the season, James Hunt wins race after race and is just 3 points behind the Austrian going into the final race of the season in Japan. In a dramatic final, the English driver then shows the better nerves. Niki Lauda doesn't want to risk his life for a second time in the inclement conditions and retires early. James Hunt, by contrast, fights his way through pouring rain to third place. With a 1-point lead, Hunt wins the title, although he only realizes that he's actually won as his teammates clamor around. James Hunt, at the pinnacle of his career, he was never to succeed in repeating the achievements of 1976. 2 years later, he drove his last race and retired from the circuit. Aged 45, he died totally without warning from a sudden heart attack in 1993. Formula One will always remember him as a smiling charmer. Time again for our news and facts. Isn't that... Yes, but I thought he'd quit driving. There's no question the helmet poking out of that Red Bull cockpit belongs to Christian Klein. But the head beneath it was last seen on Michael Ammermüller's shoulders. The German's been the new Friday driver since the Chinese Grand Prix. At 20, he has no fear of big names. For a long time, the GP2 driver was the fastest round the famous R130 corner in Suzuka. In Brazil, Ammermüller will be driving with his own helmet design for the first time, which makes 2 reasons for keeping an eye on the youngster. You've never been this close to Formula One. Come and taste the racing atmosphere. At the end of the season, we offer a prize draw for a free cockpit, a trip for 2 to Valencia in late November to see the world final of the Dell Formula BMW, where, after the young pros race, you'll be able to take the wheel yourself. Flight and accommodation are naturally included. Find out more on our homepage www.insidegrandprix.com. Simply click to join in. With a little luck, you'll win an unforgettable horsepower adventure. Last but not least, the toughest braking point in Sao Paulo. The Brembo engineers know it waits just after the home straight at the entry to the Descida do Sol. From over 300 during the race, it's down to only 95 kilometers an hour. That's full on the brake pedal for more than 3 seconds. The drivers are subjected to forces of 3.7 G. That was Inside Grand Prix 2006. We'll be back with you next year.